Rob, and I'm just going to show you my workflow for getting an image into Carbide Create. Basically the Wonder Woman. So actually I'm not going to jump to that just yet. I downloaded the PNG file, so basically grabbed a PNG file off the web somewhere. So Inkscape, I just open that up. I bring the PNG file, could be a JPEG file, could be really any graphics file. Inkscape supports a lot of different technologies or image files. So basically, you can see here the PNG has been brought in. So then what I do is I go to path and I say trace the bitmap. So what this is going to do is it's going to turn that graphic into a vectored image. So you can see here, it's the fuzzies, but what happens obviously is when it vectors this, it is able to figure out where those lines are. There's all kinds of different options in here. I have pretty basic. I have mine set for pretty basics like brightness cutoff, because generally I'm bringing in black and white images, but if you wanted to, for sure you can bring in color images, and there's any number of different options you can play around with to see if you can get a good vector version of your graphic. So when I say OK, what that does is it actually brings it into back into the main application, and that's the one that's on top. So if I drag that away, you can see there's two now. So drag that away, and then if I click on this one, I can actually delete that one, and this is the vectored version. So now the vectored version is, you can see that there's some anomalies, and there often are, that you need to fix. As well, it doesn't always bring in everything great. Like you can see here, the stars, when I brought it in, the stars don't have points always. So just some minor vector manipulation that may need to be done. What I did in this case is I actually picked this star, I cleaned it up, and then I copied it to each of the star locations, so it's actually the same star on my final design, which was based on one of the stars. As well, you can see here that what we have is we have everything sort of filled in, so it's difficult to see where the vectors actually are. When you can go to path and you can say break apart, and what happens is it turns this one big thing into a whole bunch of little things. So if I say break apart, you can see where all the little boxes are. The issue with that obviously is when they're all filled in, you don't know where the elements are. So if I click off, everything's just going to kind of disappear. The stars, you never see them again unless you change the fill and strokes. So if I'm just going to go back, so I get the object. What I'll do is I just go to fill. So here we have the fill, so you can see fill is black. So I'm going to turn fill off, and I'm going to go to stroke, and I'm going to turn it on. So my default is black. So now what happens is I have the same image, but now it's just the lines instead of the full area. And now I can say path break apart. And when I do that, now I have all the individual elements. So if I wanted to just be interested in, say, this or this star, I can do that. Now, what you can do as well is you can see here my objects. So you can go to object and say objects, and that brings up this palette. So if I close the fill box, you can see now here's all the objects. So these are the objects. If I wanted to, I can hide them and show them. I can delete them. You can do any number of different things. So like I said, if I'm going to clean this star up, then I might delete that one, and I might delete that one, and then go to this guy, and if I zoom in on this guy, I can actually double click on it, and now I can actually start playing around with, okay, I want you to be pointed, and I want this maybe to be a sharper angle, so I'll bring this guy up here, sort of idea. Just start playing around with manipulation to turn it into a star. And then once I've done that, then I'll copy it and paste, boom, boom. Now, the thing here, this is really good if all you want to do is cut stuff out. So if I just wanted to cut out stars and cut out this half circle, I can do that, and I can do that with 1/8 inch or 1/16 inch bit. But if you want to start doing like some of the fancy stuff with like the V-cut and V-carve, what you need to do is you actually need to take a look at what it is that you're trying to do and decide where you want certain elements to be. So for me, what I did is I looked at this and I thought, well, what I want these to be probably the advanced V-carve. So what that is it's going to carve the edge and then do a bottom. So that'll be all of the W's and these two things on the side. I want this to be raised, and I'm going to V-carve the stars. So this will be raised and V-carved here, which means it leaves the top of the W and the bottom of the W. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pocket to clean those out. And so when you look at it, you think, okay, well, that's great. That's how I'm going to do it. But the problem is, of course, we don't have enough elements. So what I would need to do then is I would need to close this space off, because right now I can't tell it that I actually want to do that. Hold on one sec. Okay, so I'm back. I just had to take a phone call. But anyways, yes, I think I was mentioning that we'd take a look at this and then we would have to figure out how we want to do it. So what I'd want to do is I'd want to do a pocket above the W and a pocket below the W. I'd want the top half circle or moon there shape, I want that to be solid with the carved stars. And then again, the same thing on the bottom. So the bottom part of the circle would be raised or not carved, and the stars would be carved. So based on all of that, that would take me to this design. So again, so just taking what we had there, you can see that what I did is I actually found one of my stars that I liked, or manipulated it such that it was a better star, and then went around and replaced all of the stars with this guy. What I did is I created this as a space to fill that upper W. So you can see that, in fact, I drew another circle. The circle represents completing this circle all the way around. And then that gives me that shape. And then did the same thing down here with this one. So that gives me that shape. So that fills that in. So now when I'm thinking in a carving frame of mind, I know that I'm going to be able to take this guy here, and I'm going to be able to carve it specifically so that it's going to pop right back in here. And then the same thing is true down here. I actually created that shape so that now I can carve that guy out. He's not going to be affected by anyone else. The W shapes, again, I'm going to carve those out so that they're going to be advanced V carved. So they'll be pocketed out. And then I actually selected on my second version to use a 90-degree bit instead of the 60-degree bit. So that's what I'll be using for that. But you have to keep in mind, if we go back to the original design, we also want to do a contour cut. So we want to be able to cut this out. So we want to be able to cut this shape out all the way around. And this is where we could run into issues. Now we can select, this and this and this and so on and so forth inside Carbide Create and say draw a circle around that. So in Carbide Create, it's possible to select all of those, and then using this tool I can say do a 6mm offset, so it gives me this sort of an idea. If I go back to my original design, what I did though is I actually did also make sure that I had those shapes. So you can see that in fact that green line is its own design or its own contour. So when I'm doing that, I'm ensuring that I'm going to get that absolute shape when I do my carving, as opposed to relying on Carbide Create to figure it out. So inside of Carbide Create, so when I bring it into Carbide Create, you can see that all of those elements still exist. I still have, the part of the W, I still have the bottom part of the W. You can see that I still have this guy, so I still did that contour, but come on, trying to select that guy. So you can see that that guy is actually there behind all of these other elements. So now when I go to do my tool paths, so in my tool paths, you can see I only have two tool paths. So basically the first tool path is a V-carve. So I do an advanced V-carve, so the advanced V-carve, and it does a pocketing. So I've selected a 1/4 inch end mill. You can do smaller if you wanted to, but it takes a lot longer. So I think if it's 32 minutes, but if I were to do an 1/8 inch, it would be a cleaner finish for sure. But in my case, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I think I was going to fill with crayon, or in the end, I actually filled it with epoxy. So it doesn't really matter that the bottom is spectacular. But if I was just going to leave it as wood, I'd probably do an 1/8 or a 1/16. And in that case, I would probably actually create smaller areas. So I would probably just have like another polygon, if you would, in the corners, where I would say this is going to be carved out with a 1/16 inch, sort of, so that it would be a very clean corner. And then I do the rest of it sort of like what you see here. Now in Fusion 360, that's sort of the adaptive pathing as opposed to parallel pathing or whatever. And you can play around with those things. But again, we had the discussion or went back and forth about Carbide Create. Carbide Create's actually really cool. It's actually a really easy tool to use. So here you could see if I was to say it's a 1/8 instead of 32 minutes, and if I go okay, you can see that it's going to be like 52 minutes. And again, you know, is it worth the extra half hour? In my mind, I didn't think that it was going to be worth it, which is why I left it as the 1/4 inch. So the 1/4 inch, and then basically I just went around and I selected all of the things that I wanted to do the advanced V-carve on. And then the last thing I did was I selected, I actually did the design. I selected, you know, this guy, and then I said, okay, give me a border 6 inches outside of, and then when I do my tool path, then I know that's what this line actually ended up being. And so then what I did is I said, okay, well, I'm also going to do the cutout. In this case, this one is version 1. So here, let me see if I can find version 2, because I actually did change that up. So hold on, version 2. So discard that guy. That's fine. Discard. And then here we go. So in this one, you can see that my tool paths, again, 28 minutes and 5 minutes as opposed to what was there before. So that becomes a bit of the tweaking. So you can see that it doesn't clear as much, or clears out the same amount of material, but takes a lot longer in the corners because it's now using the 90-degree bit. And then the contour only takes 5 minutes instead of 25 or whatever it was on my other one. So then based on all of that, then what I do is I generally I like the MDF or pine, and I'll say show the simulation, and that becomes my last check to make sure that everything's cool. And once I'm happy with that, then obviously I'll generate the G-code. So in your case, you aren't able to do the advanced V-carve. You would actually have to do that as 2 separate items. So that's part of, I think, the issue that you might be dealing with is once you have the BitSetter, because again, what's happening is it's the V-carve is actually allowing you to do this, pocketing out, is allowing you to pocket out. So if I didn't pocket it out, it would only do the V-bit. And you can see the V-bit, all it does is it draws between the lines, if you will. So it's like, it doesn't actually pocket it out, so you end up with this kind of thing. So it's like it's actually followed the lines, right? So following the lines, it didn't actually get rid of the material in the middle, so it actually looks goofy. But in some cases, maybe that's certain designs that may be something that you want to go for, like to have that look. But if you do the pocketing as well, then what happens is you get it so that it clears out that additional material. And on mine, it actually tells me that it's time to change the bit, and then I change the bit and it does the BitSetter thing. I don't know if you would be able to do something like that, similar. I think probably what you would have to do is you would actually be doing that V-carve that we looked at, and then also a pocket. So you could try that, sort of building your own V-carve. So you could do the pocket, and then right afterwards do the V-carve to get that shape. Anyways, so that sort of takes you through getting a graphic into vectors, trying to figure out exactly how you want to map it to how it's going to show up on the wood, and then of course, you know, Carbide Create, and then being able to, you know, save the G-code out, and so on and so forth. And again, a lot of this obviously you could do with Fusion, but based on sort of what I've done, or the way I do it, my workflow is what I've shown you, and I find that it's actually pretty quick. As long as I'm doing all of the things inside of Carbide Create that I want to do, which is just standard contour, and in this case, contour and advanced V-carve. Anyways, hope that helps. Talk to you later. Bye now.